Scanning for audio.
Hello and welcome to Tin Dog Podcast number 500. Yes, I've been going for longer than anyone cares to think about these things. And as always, on these special occasions, I have a special guest to chat to, and it's none other than the man who isn't known as Mr. Doctor Who, although for a short time he kind of was. It's Paul Cornell. Hello, Paul.
Hey, good evening. How are you?
Absolutely fine. Now, you've been busy beavering away, producing a rather nice little, well, it's the Four Doctors.
Well, to be precise, it's just called Four Doctors, but I keep dropping that "the" back into it as well. I can't avoid it. It just is a habit of speech Doctor Who fans are programmed with. It's chiefly not got the "the" in front of it because there's a Big Finish title, that, and also because it adds a certain little bit of difference to it. And so, yeah, but everybody's always going to call it the Four Doctors. I don't know why I even bother correcting people now.
Well, you know, all those years ago on Smash Hits, the Pet Shop Boys used to correct everyone who said it was the Pet Shop Boys because it was just Pet Shop Boys. So, you know, we're used to people being... Exactly. We're used to people being pedantic. We are Doctor Who fans after all. I know. So, let me see. Now, the question is, although there's Four Doctors, I know The Four Doctors was a remarkably good Big Finish audio, but that's not what we're here to discuss at all. We can chat about that sort of thing in a bit. But where do you get it from now? Is this just an electronic comic? Because they seem to be all very fashionable these days.
It's a comic-y comic. It's available in your comic shop, or by mail. Or as a digital comic on stores like Comixology. And so, yeah, it's very much a physical comic. Basically, Titan have cancelled their 10th, 11th and 12th Doctor comic lines for 5 weeks. And I get to, me and Neil Edwards get to create this lovely 5-issue weekly crossover between all three of those lines. It's available in all good comic shops a week tomorrow. And then, of course, a couple of days later, on Saturday, I say a week tomorrow, of course, you guys won't know when that is, when this appears. That is to say, it's out on Wednesday, the 12th of August. And a couple of days later, on Friday, the 14th of August, is Doctor Who Comics Day, where worldwide there'll be all sorts of creators in all sorts of comic shops. I'm doing loads of stuff in London. There are people in New York. There are people everywhere. And the full details of that have yet to be announced. So, yeah, it's a big deal. It's really pleasingly big. Titan have really put on a huge show for this. It's great.
It's really nice that you're working with Titan again after all this. You've produced a lot of other titles for Titan and indeed for lots of different comics people from around the world.
I've never worked for Titan before.
Haven't you not? I'm terribly sorry.
I don't wonder what that was.
The thing is, right, you go on Wikipedia and you look things up and you go, right, I'm going to do some research. I'm going to, not show myself up and see who these people have worked for before. And you just go, good Lord, this guy's done so much work for comics. And I'm guessing that's where you were when you dropped off my radar. Right. Because my romance with comics kind of came in, and it ended around the same time the Sandman ended because I ran out of cash and it was kind of draining all of my money. So I thought, no, I've got to draw a line in the sand somewhere. So that's where I kind of lost my romance with comics. I had a massive love for them. I did Watchmen, I did V for Vendetta. My 2000 AD collection was gigantic, but it reached a certain point in my life where I went, I've just got to step away from these things. But all of these new Doctor Who comics keep dragging me back and just waving in the corner and enticing me back and going, you loved us. You want to come back. Go on.
If you haven't read any of the Titan Doctor Who comics, this is an ideal jumping on point because we reintroduce the comic companions. Alice and Gabby. And it's designed for new readers to start here. If you just fancy a multi-Doctor crossover in comic form, it's there for you. You don't have to think about anything else on the way in. And I think you'll be pleased by the production standards, by all the extras. Titan do a really good show. And they've been there are little backup strips, humour strips in all the Titan Doctor Who lines. Mm-hmm. And they're longer than standard comics as well. The artwork is always lovely, and I'm actually writing the backup humour strips in all of the issues of Four Doctors as well, so I'm quite pleased about that. Some of them are more backup than humour, because there's stuff we couldn't do in the main strip that I wanted to have there on the side. But that's something I'm really pleased about. Titan do a really good job. There's also tremendous camaraderie to them. There's a lovely feeling about them. And editor Andrew James, he's got such a sense of small details, of precision. And that, you really feel you have a safety net. I've really enjoyed working with him. Neil Edwards, this artwork. Not only everybody's seen the first 6 pages, which we put out online, which I think showed off Neil's way with likenesses in the last page with Clara and the 12th Doctor. But that way with likenesses then continues for the rest of the run. And also he's got the body language. I can write a description like, the 11th Doctor tries to make a point, and Neil will come out with, I'll get the art in return of Matt Smith with one of those gestures of his with one finger up on each hand. It's lovely to have somebody who's got the body language of the Doctors going.
So it's a definite two-way thing between the author and the artist coming together.
Oh yeah, back and forth, and each contributes to and affects the other. And I write a full script, but then Neil will interpret that, come up with suggestions, add things here or there. Like a good example was where he added a shot of a rather important dead body, where I'd gone for reaction on the faces of everybody standing around, and I thought immediately, yeah, he's absolutely right. We need to see it, otherwise we won't get the full impact, and things like that. It's very much a collaboration. And the lovely thing about comics is, right down to the wire, before we send the finished, coloured, done comic off to be printed, that night I can look at it and go, well, maybe an extra little joke here, maybe change that dialogue just a tiny bit to fit exactly that expression. So you can really fix it down to a microscopic degree right to the last minute, and I love that.
So when you're dealing with comics, obviously you've worked in the comic medium as you're doing now, but you've also done your Big Finish audios. You've done the TV stuff, which I'm sure everyone wouldn't forgive me if I discussed that a bit later. But you've also done the novels. Now, let's face it, there's you and there's Gareth Roberts who've done Doctor Who in every single available format.
He's done a stage event.
That was it. That's on my notes. All you need to do is pull off a little stage thing, and then you can get ahead. But no, he's done it. So you need to do stage, and then you need to invent a whole new medium in order to do medium.
What about Terence? Terence has done audio. He's done stage plays. He's done the books. He's done television. What else has Gareth done that Terence hasn't?
You know what? I'm going to read that Doctor Who lists book that was out last year that said that, and I'm going to check. Because if that's the case, you could be in the top 3. But that's beside the point.
Well, I think Gareth and Terence definitely deserve that crap. But but no, I'm delighted to be doing this, and people. I think there's something that I keep encountering in comments lists and things like that. Why isn't the 9th Doctor in here? And I think if he were to interact with the 10th, 11th, and 12th Doctors, it would spoil his story utterly.
It would, but again, getting back to the 4 Doctors, the one that was from Big Finish, that whole thing was covered where the Doctors instantly forget that they'd met after the meetings. You could milk that a little bit.
I'm following Stephen Moffat's theory from DWM as to what happens after Doctor meetings, but at the same time, we'd still have Rose and Captain Jack. being able to say to him, no, actually, Clara told us Gallifrey's fine. You're fine. Because obviously that's the first thing they'd ask. And obviously his future, even if his future selves wanted to be really pristine about the time stream, somebody would tell him. And
in all fairness, it does keep the whole pretense of the mystique of the Eccleston Doctor going.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would ruin his season to have him meet other doctors. But what's really important about this is that I really want to emphasise that I love that Doctor, that we all do. That Titan are in the middle of doing a miniseries about him, which is really good. And it's just that we think that he's kind of in a sacrosanct little bubble, and in terms of interaction. And also this was designed to be a crossover between the three ongoing Titan titles, and we're still in the middle of the Ninth Doctor's miniseries, so it would be a really weird and awkward juxtaposition there as well. But people have said it's because we don't like him and don't think he's worthy, and that's just not true at all.
You've got to look at the Ninth Doctor and really be able to step back and see him for what he was, and that's perfectly understandable. You were talking about the way that comics and comic writing is very interactive with you and the artist, and especially, well, I'm guessing with the editors as well. Now, you've worked with other people on your writing quite a bit, obviously with your wife on some of the big finishes, but there was Circular Time and as well as Seasons of Fear and things like that. So do you prefer writing collectively, and how do you approach that, or is it more of a... Yep.
No, it's just me. I like writing on my own really very much. I haven't collaborated for a long time, and it's... In both of those cases, it was because I wanted those guys to bring something new to the table, and they did. And but generally, I like it being just me and the page. Mike it was about him writing 2 episodes and me writing 2 episodes, and with Caroline, of course, it was part of a whole courtship ritual, and it was. Wow, I haven't even thought about that in years. I suppose I have collaborated with others more recently with Wild Cards for George R.R. Martin, writing parts of writing stories to fit in with
the Wild Cards,
one of his Mosaic novels.
Yeah,
but. No, anyway, so yes, just me.
Just you, all by yourself, and that's fine. And even with the comic books, they're kind of just giving you the visuals to go with your vision.
Yeah, but, it is more collaborative than that. I think a lot of artists, to give them a writing credit would be wrong, but I think one should be aware of absolutely how much they contribute in terms of storytelling.
The thing is, for a while, you were, the go-to guy for Doctor Who. My copy of the Discontinuity Guide is the single most thumbed thing on my shelf. When my mate Andy died, he left me his copy in the will because he knew how damaged mine had become.
Oh, that's terrific.
And it's sort of sat here. It's actually bound in that Fablon stuff you used to do books at school in, just to try and keep it alive. And then you sort of stepped back, which is completely understandable, post sort of TV adaptation of Human Nature, and then you wanted to reinvent yourself doing other things so that you could become almost justifying it to yourself, listening to other interviews. Are you all right?
I'm. Oh, you mean because I just
the mic? Yes.
Right. I thought you were asking about my mental health.
No, sorry. Well, I can do that if you want, but let's go back. If you could just start answering that again, and I'll edit that bit out.
Well, no, you don't have to. Don't worry about it.
Oh, fair enough.
I'm a lot more comfortable these days. I think I've proved myself away from Doctor Who, and because I did feel that it was the only thing people knew me for. And there's something that happens on Twitter, which is that every couple of times a week, somebody will say, "Are you coming back to Doctor Who?" And I'll have to go, "No, really, no." And the most awful variation on that is when I go, "Oh, I'm announcing something exciting today.
Oh, yeah.
And somebody says, oh, are you coming back to Doctor Who? And I go, when it's announced, I go, no, actually, it's my collected short stories, something I've waited for my whole life. And they go, oh, well, maybe next time. And it's kind of like that.
The rest of your career is set in class to what everyone expects.
Exactly. That's the spectre I've been living under for such a long time. And but I feel in recent years I've really gotten away, and so now I feel happier about coming back. I don't feel that I'm pulling an albatross back onto my shoulders. I think that I can come back when I like now, which is a really good feeling.
Yeah.
And also it lets me enjoy it more. And I've become, a fan again. I've been going to Gallifrey as a fan, the Gallifrey convention in Los Angeles.
Ah, yes, I Dream of Gallifrey, which I'm sure is the title of a book in there in itself.
And so, I can let my fanishness happen without worrying.
Yeah.
So this is really good.
No, and it's always nice to be able to just sort of let yourself go and grow into yourself. I mean, you talked about, there was a project years ago that you mentioned, which I never saw evolve, which was, I think it was called Chalk.
Oh, good lord. That's, well, you never know.
I was going to say, that was something I was particularly interested in sort of looking forward to, but I was wondering what you'd do with it. But I've got a feeling that some of the themes that will have gone on in the original project, because nothing ever really goes away, it just gets used and absorbed into other works. There's well, you never know. There's a possibility that this may happen. It was my it's a novel. It's a standalone novel which something may happen with. Anyway. Indeed. But there are other projects you're going to. Now, before we talk about the other things, because I'm quite interested in the Witches book that's coming out very soon.
Oh, yeah.
But,
sorry, go on.
Well, what I was going to say was, but before we get to that, there's a little thing that's been going on, sort of rumbling along on the internet. Now, I know you did the Hugo-nominated Squee class. You must say Hugo-nominated before you say that at any point. But, of course, there's now the Cornell collection.
Actually.
Oh.
We won twice, Squeecast.
Well, one of those really nice little Hugo Awards. Honestly, they're lovely.
I've only got one because that was the year there was a Hugo shortage. So they announced that they were only going to do a certain number of statues, and there were too many of us. So I took the hit. But, so I've only got one Hugo statue. But,
nice. We always remember the great Hugo shortage. So you're now in the Cornell Collective. Well, you're head of the Cornell Collective. And do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, I was enjoying podcasts so much, and they're a huge part of my entertainment, and particularly Doctor Who podcasts. And I just wanted to join in, really. And I thought, what I do is I move in these three different worlds. And so I get together guests from comics, from science fiction prose, and from television / Doctor Who. And there's always a big dollop of Doctor Who with one of these guests at least. And we get these three guests on board and we talk to them in a very relaxed late night chat show format. And it's going well so far. I'm quite pleased with it. We're 2 episodes in, and we drop an episode every month. And I'm just really enjoying it.
I had to listen to episode 2 today, and it's kind of, well, it's not just informative, but you're introducing people who I've not come across. I hadn't heard of the YouTube girl from episode 2 at all, and everything was very interesting that she had to say, as well as the authors, of course. Anybody who's listened to the Tin Dog podcast knows that I'm a struggling, non-existent author, and listening to other people tell the tales of their evolution as authors and writers and things like that really says a lot to me, and it's kind of useful as well. So if you've not heard the Cornell Collective, go out, download it. Of course it's free, just like all the other podcasts. Go for it.
I really like exactly that effect you describe. I love that people who come in for one of those people will end up hearing about the other two, that they get introduced to each other and they meet each other's audiences as well.
Exactly. Oh, getting back to something you said earlier, obviously I'm guessing you've got George R.R. Martin's email address. Could you email him and tell him not to do anything else? We don't mind him taking his time at all. take as long as he needs to write them. Just stop doing any other projects so that you can concentrate. That's fine. That's all we ask.
I'm not about to say that to him at all.
You can tell him someone else said it. It's fine.
Yeah, like that would make it any better.
Not at all. I know. We're worried about him. We're worried about his characters.
I was very pleased that he took several blogs out of his schedule to really tear the living daylights out of the sad puppies recently. I thought that was a good use of his time.
Oh, fair enough.
But
Sorry, we're wandering now, and I've taken you completely away from the Cornell Collective.
Yeah, well, I think that's all there is to it, honestly.
Well, in that case, I just need to ask you a couple of more things. I've got a massive list, but I don't want to take up your time.
I meant that's all there is to it about the Cornell collection.
Oh, right.
But, fair enough. Do keep on going.
Okay, next on the big list of things to chat about, obviously, is your new Witches book that's coming out, as you are indeed a ridiculously busy writer, wanting to spend time by himself as you are. I've
got four things coming out in 6 weeks.
Four? That's just far too much.
Two comics, a short story collection and a novella within 6 weeks. So publicising these is getting really tough. I'm having to do joint blogs where I separate them out, and my Twitter audience must be getting really bored because I just have to keep leaping between different things.
And we're all going to have to make a choice between which ones we buy first.
Well, I hope that's the choice. The Witches of Lichford is a novella that's coming out from Tor.com, which are ebooks and print on demand, so you can have a physical copy if you want one, if you order one from your store. It's the second in Tor.com series of these, which is an ongoing monthly series, so I'm very honoured to be so high in the batting order. It's about three disparate women in a little Cotswolds town in the present day who band together to fight the onset of supernatural evil in the form of a supermarket chain which is arriving in their town. And it's kind of, there's humour, it's a little bit Pratchett-esque, but there's also great darkness as well. And I'm immensely proud of it. It's me doing that modern fantasy thing, and really, really delighted to. Again, Tor.com are a good house, and there's a lovely cover, and I just can't wait to get the first physical copies in my hands. I'm delighted by that, and that's out September I think it's September the 6th, certainly in the first week of September.
It's got a very nice looking cover.
It's gorgeous, isn't it?
It is very nice. It's one of those things you'd walk into a bookshop and you'd go, "Ooh, what's that?" And it would just sort of attract your attention from the corner of the eye. It's not overstated. It's nice and subtle, but it looks like it would have a nice feel while you were reading it as well. It's one of those textured things.
And it's kind of, I wanted to write something for and about the people where we live now. We're in the middle of the Cotswolds, and I wanted to write something that would appeal to people around here and people who might want to come here and have a real feel of this very, very deep Englishness to it.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
There are witches in this story. Obviously, you've got the Damned Band going on as well, which has got some more demonic aspect, shall we say. And then on the internet, you describe yourself as a pagan and a Christian. Now, you've got, obviously, your wife's got her, well, I wouldn't say even job, I'd say her calling.
Oh, yes.
Yes. And you've got yourself down as a pagan. Now, as someone who also has, let's call it a green man door knocker, and we'll leave it there.
Well, that's between you and your doctor.
Yeah, exactly. Do you want to talk anything about that? Because it's kind of interesting.
Well, I tend not to talk about this because
if you don't want to, that's absolutely fine.
No. But I do when asked. I think there's a difference between being asked and just inviting yourself. I'm a Christian with pagan sympathies. That is to say, I was a Wiccan at college, and I've always adored Wiccan practice, and I see no conflict. Most of the magic that's been done in Britain in history, and I think this is reflected very well in the book of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell.
Yes,
was in a Christian context, and that's something that's completely lost as an idea now. That most so-called witches, most practitioners down the centuries would have regarded themselves as Christians while being Wiccans, Wicca was invented by Stanley Gardner in the 1920s, but while being whatever the original belief system that Wicca was a translation of. I just don't see the need to cast it aside or be anti it just because I've got this new thing going which doesn't feel antithetical to it at all. And I've certainly practiced. Caroline hasn't. She's just been invited to some ceremonies and stood there watching, observing. But I think that's an important distinction to draw. But now I've practiced with my belief system. At an EasterCon, Liz Williams led a circle, and I was very grateful to be invited to participate in that, and did so with some Christian contribution.
You know, it's a considerably more. I think I like to look at it as a more of a medieval approach. It's like, yes, there's this, but there's also this, and they're all ways of looking at the universe.
Yes, indeed. And if we're being truly ecumenical, that is to say, if we're not fighting with Buddhists and
and it's a fairly one-sided fight.
Well, yeah, that would be
yes,
and with Islam and things like that. Then we recognise Wicca too, and largely this is what happens on a wherever these encounters happen. I mean, there's Liz Williams describes a lovely vicar of Glastonbury who really gets on with that community, and so yeah. I can't say it enters much in my day-to-day life now, simply because I'm not somewhere where that happens very much. But I wouldn't say no to it, and I think it's all about spirituality. Needless to say, I'm a very liberal Christian, but to my great pleasure, I found the Church of England generally is. It's a very loose federation.
For me, the real conflict that would be apparent from somebody from the outside would be your love of science fiction and science, which usually, well, that's the one I've come across. People just going, if you look to the future and you have a great belief in science, doesn't that more than likely underline or rule out certain other things? And then you think, well, these are people who are big fans of, say, the Tomorrow People and psychic powers and evolution. And it's like if you're reading The Watchmen and you see Doc Manhattan and he says, human life intrigues me, I'm off to create some. And if you can completely believe into the idea of superheroes, but you'd have trouble with the idea of a god creator, you go, oh, hang on.
Well, let me see. I believe in rationality myself. I believe in science. I believe in evolution. I accept the argument of evolution. I think that a powerful sense of skepticism is really important. And the first thing Caroline was told, literally the first thing, that when she went to theological college, the principal got up in front of them all. It is like Hogwarts, and said to them, "You are here to learn doubt," and that's been very much part and parcel of her calling. And
it's a considerably healthier attitude to have than someone who just has complete faith in something.
Well, yes, because complete faith
it blocks everything else out.
I always found the word faith to be a really it doesn't really describe how I feel. I have a belief.
Yeah.
Faith seems to be used as something unshakable.
Yeah.
And the thing is, though, I have this really nice safety net that if somebody conclusively proved to me that there was no God and that the Christ, I think it's hard to argue against a historical Christ, but that Christ was just a guy, then I would say, okay, you've proved that to me, but I will still be a Christian because I think this is the best way to live. I think that there's a whole branch of Christianity called the non-realists who don't actually believe that there's a God, but who think that this is the best way to live one's life. And, it's not that I would believe in the face of the evidence. I would still act this way in the face of the evidence. And I think walking the walk is more important than talking the talk or having the belief.
Ah, yes.
But it would be very hard to prove to me that. And, anyway, this has gone in a direction I didn't expect.
Well, that's absolutely fine. That's not a problem. I'll drag you back. That's not a problem. Here we are. You always finish the Cornell Collective. Back in the room. It's fine. You always finish the Cornell Collective with one question, which is, what's your favourite piece of work? So let's turn it round, because you never get to answer that. Let's find out, at this moment, what's your favourite. Now, you can choose from the 4 that you've got coming out, or you can go all the way back if you want, if there's some sort of gut reaction.
Can I choose one from each medium?
If you wish, you can do whatever you want. You're the guest.
Televised human nature.
Okay.
Lovely direction, great cast. Russell's bits are wonderful.
Even over Father's Day?
Yeah, actually, yeah. Don't quite know why. I don't think I got the time paradox right in Father's Day. I think that I like time paradoxes where it's all absolutely like clockwork.
Yeah, and
that's a more emotionally driven one in Father's Day, and that always annoys me a bit. So human nature comics. I'd name both these 2 comics currently, but back in the day, because one always tends to be in love with one's current thing, but I think this damn band is awesome, actually, in terms of the artwork and all that. But more about that later. But the back in the day Action Comics, or Knight&Squire especially. And I'm very proud of what we did with Fazia Hussein on Captain Britain. And in books... I think the Shadow Police novels are pretty good. But my Jonathan Hamilton stories, those short stories in 4 different places, delighted with those. That's my favourite thing in prose.
Well, there you go. For me, I'll always come back to this because it's one of the few Virgin novelizations that hasn't sort of found its way into storage. It's got to be No Future.
Really?
Yeah, I just. I'd gone through the novelizations, and I just loved No Future, and I often think about.
It's awful. It's terrible.
Oh, you see, I think it's because it has been a while since I've read it, and I will go back, but I wouldn't describe it as terrible at all. There's that. Yeah, sorry, go on.
The way that I hold off all the explanations and kind of plough them flat like smoothing a carpet until they form an enormous bulge at the end. And I literally have to have a chapter of everybody standing around explaining everything at the end.
You know what? I probably needed that at the time.
Oh.
I probably needed a nice little route of exposition. No, I remember absolutely loving No Future at the time. I genuinely do.
Oh, I just think it's the book that Craig Hinton gave a good kicking to in DWM, and I sat down afterward reading his review and thought he's absolutely right. And I thought I'd become decadent and foolish and packed it with in-jokes, and that's what made me do Human Nature.
You know what? Perhaps that would be it. Perhaps it was the in-jokes, and I was an in-joke kind of a person at the time. I adored Professor X to such an extent that me and my mate actually made Professor X T-shirts.
Well, that's nice to hear.
Yeah.
But no, Human Nature was reaction to that. I wanted to write something serious again.
Oh, so even if you didn't like it, something wonderful came of it, because Human Nature was pretty good. Well, let's face it, it's the one that got adapted. It's the one that's just had a reprint.
Nice reprint.
It's a very nice cover. It's just nice.
I was really pleased with that. They've done a really good job.
So, before we sort of finish off this remarkably nice chat, is there something else you wanted to talk about? Because I think this damn band deserves to have a bit of a chat.
Oh, well, thank you. It's my 6-issue miniseries from Dark Horse, which will be out, the first issue, which by the time your listeners hear this. It's about the most famous rock band of the 1970s, who would like to say that they worship the devil and discover to their absolute horror that actually they worship the devil. It's a Ghostbuster-style horror comedy, and it's told to camera like a mockumentary, with interviews and concert footage and handheld cameras following them around, so we get to see the gap between what they say and what they do. And Tony Parker, the artist, is just doing amazing things, and I get to do all this lovely back matter like discographies with album covers and rock family trees and all that, and delighted with that. That's on Comixology and in your comic shops now. And also, I've got my collected short stories, A Better Way to Die.
Of course, I meant to discuss those earlier on. Go for it.
That's the Four Things, which has made a raid on the UK Amazon SF Anthologies top 10 today. We were as high as number 7 at one point, and very pleased to have all my short stories in one place, including all the Hamilton stories, and very pleased that somebody else would decide to publish that. Just delighted. And I've done introductions for all of them and put them in kind of context. And it's got my wild card stuff and all the Hamilton stuff. So anyway, yeah, thank you for letting me talk about all this stuff on a Doctor Who podcast. Very pleased to do so.
An absolute pleasure. I mean, the Tin Dog's been around for a while, but as most people know, we just don't have that many guests. It's normally just me talking to a microphone randomly. So I'd like to
listen to your Liz Miles edition. That was fun.
Ah, yes. Well, this is episode 500, and thank you very much, Mr. Paul Cornell, for joining me.
You have another 500. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Be seeing you.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Tin Dog Podcast, available on RSS, iTunes, Stitcher, Audio Boom, and Tumblr. Doctor Who and its associated works are copyright of the BBC. No infringement is intended. You can contact the show, donate, buy merchandise, or find out more about my other projects by visiting the Tin Dog Podcast homepage and clicking on the links. The Tin Dog Podcast is a founder member of the Doctor Who Podcast Alliance. On the 5th of September 2015, Hooverville will return. The biggest little Doctor Who convention in the whole of the UK is proud to present several fantastic guests. First off is the Colin Baker, a man who needs absolutely no introduction. Guests also include the author Jenny Colgan, responsible for Dark Horizons and Time Trips, Richard Marson, the man behind JNT, The Life and Scandalous Times, and the brand new book Drama and Delight, the biography of Verity Lambert, Dan Starkey, the man behind the mask when it comes to Commander Strax, and of course Ian the Elf in the Christmas special, Terence Dix, one of the men behind the Third Doctor and more Target novelisations than you can shake a stick at, the actor David Benson, from Robot of Sherwood, Iris Wildtime and the Scarifiers, Matthew Waterhouse, yes, Adrake, Michael Pickwood, the current production manager on Doctor Who, and Karen Louise Hollis, author of The Man Behind the Master, the biography of Anthony Ainley. More guests may be added, but either way, that's a fantastic lineup. Visit the Derby Quad website on www.derbyquad.co.uk and follow the links. Saturday the 5th of September 2015. See you there.
Tonight,